Hello, welcome. This is George Brewster. He flew Spitfires in World War II. He's 100 years old and we went flying today. This is a little podcast and montage of our day. And yeah, let's get right into it with some questions. What led you to become a pilot or a flyer?
I think I always felt an urge to fly when I was young. I'd be jumping off the garage with an umbrella or something like that. We turned inside out, and thank God I only did it in the winter when there's a snowbank, which or otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you. But, I've been fascinated by flying, and I used to make model airplanes out of wood from the wood box, and I'd carve them. My grandfather made me keep sharp blades because he said the dull blades slip and they cut, but if you have sharp blades, you do just what you want to, and you do it a little at a time, and you'll be all right. And that's what I did. Yeah. And then later, I got to building some more substantial aircraft out of not in a way. The wood block ones were pretty solid, but I started making them out of balsa wood, and I'd make them with a framework all of the balsa, because I had to use horse glue before. It came in sheets, and you had to dissolve it in warm water for a long time, and it took forever to set, so you had to prop up the little model for overnight, and then you could work on it a little bit more. Pretty slow process. Yeah. So all of a sudden they had balsa wood and fast drying glue and Japanese tissue, and I started to make some big ones. I made a 4-foot wingspan, what they called a Wakefield Winner in 1936, I believe it was, and this thing it was what we called an ROG, a rise off ground. It would take off the ground itself and fly. When it came in, it would land. Now, we didn't know where it was going to land because there was no way of controlling it. But I even got it to the point where it would stay up and the propellers would stop and they're like a brake. So I thought I'll modify that. So I used to cut sardine can top and make little hinges. And they used and bend them around a pin, take off the ground, and fly up. And when the elastic band or propeller ran out, then the wings would fold back along the side, and it became a glider, and it'd stay up ever so much longer. In fact, it'd stay up so much longer that sometimes I nearly lost it.
In like trees and stuff.
Yeah, I did. I didn't want to lose it, and for winding the propeller, I used to wind it backwards. I used an egg beater, and I modified it so it had a little hook on the end, and I put it around the propeller, and I could just wind it up in a jiffy. I was full of ideas like that, and it kind of led me to. I didn't know. First, I thought I wanted to be maybe a mechanic and do work on airplanes, and then I thought, no, I really want to fly airplanes. And in 1934, my dad took me up in an old. What they called a Curtis Robin, had disc wheels, and I think it has 2-blade wooden propeller, but it was a nice airplane, and we flew all over the city of St. John, New Brunswick, and that was a real treat. And from then on, I was hooked. I was going to fly. When the war came along, and I saw an opportunity, because I'd seen the inhumanity of people invading a country of innocent people, and dropping bombs on men, women, and children, and they hadn't hurt anybody, innocent people, and they kill them. And some they're even putting into jails. I learned later how horrible their prison camps were and terrible, because I got to see them, but I had to join up. I just had to go and do the best I could. If you'd seen me then, you'd see a guy who, even when he was 19, looked about 15 or 14, and I was very immature, I'm afraid, but I also was pretty good at flying. And according to the logbook, it says an above-average pilot. I think that was probably a fair assessment. Is better ones and more experienced ones, but I was coming along pretty well. That's what And I kept learning as I went, and I flew many, many different types of airplanes and had many narrow escapes. But that's why it was a real thrill just to see those models fly. I used to sell them in the $5 store, and I could get quite a good price for these wonderful little flying models.
That's awesome.
I was doing pretty good.
Yeah. Out of all your flying experience, what was your biggest regret?
The biggest regret I ever had was losing so many friends in the war. And to see so many Canadians who believed they had to do their very best to stop the enemy from harming other people, and from the invaders had to be driven back. But I could never bring myself to the idea of killing people, so I had to look at it as though you've got to put their machinery out of action. If a plane gets shot down over Britain by a Spitfire or something, then he shouldn't have been there trying to drop bombs on us, or it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So he had only himself to blame, as long as they kept hurting people, and then we felt that way. I wasn't I was too young to be in the Battle of Britain, but those who were a handful of a few thousand, and they turned the tide of the war in the air for the first time in history. Because if they hadn't done that, I think the Germans would have been over. Mm-hmm. The British were prepared for them, but I think we would have been overwhelmed because they had a very efficient fighting machine, and their troops and everything. They'd been in Spain and they got lots of practice, whereas our people were just going in from, they're just shop boys or bankers or whatever, and farm boys, and they went in and they had to learn from scratch. So I think we were outclassed in the beginning of the war, but the British people learned fast, and we got some wonderful pilots from Britain and the colonies. In fact, one I knew, George Brewster, was our outstanding Canadian ace, but he shot down more aircraft than anybody else. Another fellow was rather unprepossessing. He had kind of, that's the way he was described by his superiors, but he's the best you'll see.
Best flyer, best shooter?
Best, he got the most enemy planes down.
He
was little, and he had scraggy hair, and I think his teeth were rather prominent. I think he had freckles. I'm not sure. His name was Ginger Lacey, but he went ahead and he just did miracles.
He was guns blazing.
He was driven to do the best he could, and he did.
He just led the fleet. He led the fleet out to battle.
Oh, he got to be a leader. Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. He shot down more planes during the Battle of Britain than any other British pilot. Wow. He was good.
You're a sharpshooter too.
I used to shoot flies off the barn door. So yes. And I used to shoot mice when I was out in the log cabins in the woods, staying in the woods. I used to do this a lot. And I'd shoot mice when they were running around the log cabin because we didn't want them in there. And they'd start running around after dark, and I'd just get a flashlight, shine on them, and I'd use my 22 and I'd bop them off. I could get them running too. Yeah. And so I did become a rather good shot.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a young person desiring to be a pilot when they're older, either for a military, for example, the Royal Canadian Air Force, or as a commercial pilot? What advice would you give them? I
think the biggest single thing is to learn early to choose your company carefully, because some people are false friends, and some make good enemies. And you've got to recognize these people. If you hang out with the best, and the people are trying to accomplish something, in a group like Air Cadets or Navy Cadets or whatever, Army Cadets, Boy Scouts, 4-H clubs, you go in with people who are good people trying to become better people. I think that's so important. Yeah. And learn that all the people around you, every man you ever meet or woman, that they know things you don't know. Just be humble about it, because they do, and you can learn from them if you have the right attitude, and they can learn from you, and that's the way it should be.
So your advice would be to pick who you hang out with very carefully.
Yeah.
One thing on that is that there's a quote from a song from an artist that I like, and it's similar to this, and it says, you should keep one eye on your enemies and two eyes on your friend, because at least when they're your opposition, you know their intentions.
Yeah. Say that again, please. You should keep one eye.
One eye on your enemies, two eyes on your friend, because at least when they're your opposition, you know their intentions.
Yes. Their intentions bode well. Do not bode well, but those of your friends will stand by you. And not when the going's good, just, but when the going's hard, they'll pitch in and help you, bail you out, help you out, lift you up. They're your friends to have. And
would you say then that in order to be successful, you have to be surrounded by people who are willing to help you?
I think so, because some governments today are what we call, there's democracy, autocracy, but I think we have something even worse than that. It's called a kakistocracy, and it means government by the worst who attracts the worst around him. To have such a government is a losing proposition. It's happening right around the world, I'm afraid. The very worst people tend to gravitate due to their ambitions to become the sole leader, and they haven't learned the value of being with others and listening to their advice too, because they do ever so much better if they learn from each other.
That's true. What's the next one? Okay. How has being a pilot for the How has being a pilot for the Royal Canadian Air Force been rewarding for you?
How has it been rewarding to me? I think it was a profound learning experience. To most of my fellow pilot flyers were truly dedicated people. Flying gave me a wonderful feeling of operating in an exhilarating atmosphere, another dimension in the world. Just like today when we were up there, you're in another dimension where you're seeing the world from a different point of view. And it's so wonderful. And I felt sometimes that my own arms, the wings were extensions of my own arms, that I was a bird and I could fly like a bird if I knew what to do.
You mentioned that the Spitfire felt like you were flying like a bird.
Yes.
It was reactive and flowy.
You asked me what
What was the craziest or your closest to death moment that you have ever had, or your stupidest moment, your most stupid
the stupid one first, I might as well admit it, was flying under a bridge in the Kiel Canal. And my buddy and I were up, and we'd finished our mission. We were on the way home, and we looked down at this bridge on the Kiel Canal, and the big ships can't go there. Only the little cruise ships can go, the smallest ones. And that's because it's so narrow and they're not high, but they have drawbridges so they can pass under the little ones. Even you got to lift them up.
Yeah,
they're not so to fly under one of those bridges. I've always wanted to fly under a bridge. Don't ask me why. It just seemed like it'd be fun to go whoosh right down. My friend was thinking the same thing. We were flying. He looked over at me and he pointed down. And I nodded. We went. He went first, and I went after. That was a mistake for me because I started realizing I was going to be right in his prop wash, and I was.
What's prop wash? Sorry.
That's when the air coming back from his propeller leaves turbulent air
Right.
for me to fly into.
Yeah.
And I hit the blast of his turbulence when I was underneath. In the aircraft, I had the hardest job to keep it steady and get the heck out of there. But I went under about 400 miles an hour, and I thought, I'll never try that again, and I'd recommend anyone who wants to live a long and happy life, don't try that. It's not a good idea.
Well, it's funny you say that because I would say you've had quite a long and happy life.
Yeah.
Maybe the key is to fly with a bridge.
Yeah, well, I think looking back on it, I have mixed feelings. I realized it was stupid, but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I got through it. You know, the dangerous things that have happened, like I was landing once at what they call a Beechcraft Expediter in Toronto in 0-0 weather. 0-0 means you can't hardly see the hand in front of your face. You can't see your feet on the ground. That's 0-0. No flying. You have to be able to see at least 1 mile ahead and 500 feet up in order to land the plane on any of the airports. That's the regulation. Anything below that, you're not allowed to land. So I went to Trenton one day with another pilot, and I was in control. I was flying the plane. He was second pilot. And when we got approached Trenton, we were running into a bit of cloud, and he had an instrument rating for flying in cloud. I didn't, but I was flying, and that was okay because he had one for the plane. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, when we got to Trenton, they said, and I asked for landing clearance, and they said negative. There's no landing or taking off. Your conditions are 0-0. Proceed to your alternate. And I said, our alternate is Downsview near the Toronto airport. And they said, proceed to your alternate now. So we did. When I got there, they told me negative, no landing, nothing in, nothing out. All traffic that comes to Toronto is being diverted to Detroit because we're accepting nobody. The conditions are 0-0. And I said, Roger, message received and understood. However, I have only a few gallons. You are our alternate. They said, go to your alternate. I said, you are our alternate. I have approximately 40 minutes of fuel remaining on board. Where would you like me to crash the airplane, or should I just abandon it and parachute down? And right away, I knew they wouldn't want me to crash in a populated city like Toronto. There'd be great death.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was impossible to bring me in. However, they'd try. He said, Roger, we're turning you over to ground control almost immediately. They made me fly a certain course so they could identify me on radar. And from then on, the controller was probably the best controller I ever heard in my life. He was so steady and so exact and so with it. He must have been a retired pilot that had a lot of experience. I don't know. I never did know because they tried to shush the whole thing up. He talked me in, and he'd tell me how far out I was and how high I was. And he said, now you can put your propeller in fine pitch now. And then he said, now so you slow down to 110. Now you can drop your undercarriage. Now we give it about 15 degrees of flap. And then he'd say, now you're
15
at
degrees
300.
up?
Hmm?
15 degrees up? Like the flap? Or
The wings here and the flap drops down like that.
Yeah.
To slow you down.
I
and
thought
give you
I thought the brake was up, right?
Some of them do go up and down.
Yeah.
Well, the flaps, no, that's the ailerons. They control the way you turn.
Oh, I see.
The ailerons are different. I don't want to go there right now, but the flaps are just in there, and that's the only thing they do is slow the aircraft down.
Right.
They both go down at the same time. The ailerons, one goes up, one goes down. Anyway, I remember coming in and feeling a sense of he's bringing me in on what we call a precautionary landing, and that means a long, slow approach until I will land at a shallow angle. Did it? Not a sudden landing like a fighter pilot would do.
Yeah,
but
very smooth.
yeah, the way birds come in.
And then just touch.
And they touch and they drag. So I did that, and he called me and he said, "You're at 100 feet. No, you're at 300 feet. Reduce speed to 90. Carry on. You're doing fine. You're about 50. You're about so many feet above the ground." And then he said, "You're near the ground now. Add a little power and reduce and bring your keep round out," is what he said. Round out and reduce your throttle slightly.
What does round out mean?
Round out means you pull the stick back and you just, instead of flying in it like this, you're like this.
Right. Yeah.
You really are gonna stall that aircraft on the ground, but you want to make sure you're very close to the ground before you stall it. He brought me in, and
you couldn't see anything.
I couldn't see anything. No, even when I was on the ground, I couldn't see the wingtips.
Wow.
I was flying absolutely blind, and I was untrained to do this. I was completely untrained. I'd never been had that kind of training.
It's pretty cool. That's a good groundsman.
It's that's when I call on the Lord then for, this is beyond my ability, Lord, I need you now. Be calm, follow the instructions. This is what it seemed to be saying. Follow my lead.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in control. I am in control. You have to do what you're told. I did that.
Yeah.
Put my faith. But it's my faith in the fact that God is with me that enables me to do this with calmness. That very few people have that kind of calmness. Yeah. I can get in a panic too, but not then. I needed everything and I did it. I did exactly what he said. I rounded out and he said, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. And I heard the wheels. The 3 wheels hit the ground almost instantaneously. It's what we call a 3-point landing. It's very hard to do it in an expeditor when you can see the ground, but to imagine me coming in like this and doing it was something really storybook. But that's the truth. That's what happened. And I had to keep my feet on the pedals like this. One little touch of either pedal would have sent me swerving off the runway. And then I would have probably done a ground loop. It wouldn't have been too bad because my speed was slowing. But he had me at a low speed, like at 90, that's a low speed. Mm-hmm. And it just, at the moment of contact, I was probably doing maybe 80 or 85. It's very touchy there.
Yeah.
The fact is I did land. And I landed beautifully. I thanked him. I said, that's the best job I've ever had experienced to controlling. I said, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I never learned his name, but I often used to say, may his tribe increase. Mm-hmm. People like that are such a rarity. Yeah. I couldn't have done it. It was a cooperation and trust. The trust I had in him and the trust I had in God.
Yeah.
That was one. There was one more because I landed, once I came in, I was flying from a place called Trenton again, and I was supposed to stop in, I was supposed to fly over Toronto and carry on to a place called Centralia in the Great Lakes. So when I got to Toronto, everything was fine. They told me the weather was going to be good. It was going to remain CAVU. CAVU means ceiling and visibility unlimited. Okay. That's what they told me. But I was about 15 minutes west of Toronto, and all of a sudden, I ran into a blank wall of cloud, and the wind came through. I was in a tornado, and the aircraft was getting tossed around. The radio went out, and most of the instruments went off. Their had gyros, and the gyros toppled. I only had the airspeed and height indicator, which is somewhat inaccurate under those conditions, and I don't. The needle ball and airspeed is what we used to call it, and that's all I had, minimal. I flew west. I didn't dare turn back. You're not allowed to because Toronto has a lot of air traffic coming from other directions, and if I ran into them, before I would know what was happening, it would cause 2 planes to crash over Toronto.
Don't turn back.
I couldn't, no turning back.
No turning back.
I had to press on, and I had about 6 very experienced pilots on board who had this kind of training. Mm-hmm. I was experienced more than some of them in many ways, but I didn't have this kind of training at all. So I just kept on flying, and I was afraid the wind seemed to be blowing so hard, and the lightning kept hitting the left wing and going out. We call it the port wing and going out the starboard. It seemed to be coming from the south, the way the wind would, and the lightning would come in and hit it. The cold cockpit would light up, and then you pass out the other wingtip that has little things on it there. They dispense the electricity, and it was a horrible feeling. And I could only imagine these guys knowing they had an inexperienced pilot flying this, and there was anyone, you and my co-pilot, could do about it. I was in control. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh Lord, I need you now. Mm-hmm. I need you now. Be with me, I pray. I'll feel the faith, hope, and I kept on. And I should have been able to be over the airport in about an hour and a half or just under 2. But it was 2.5 hours and more, almost 3 hours. I still hadn't seen anything. And I was hoping I wasn't blown way off course with this tornado. And lo and behold, all of a sudden there's a break in the cloud straight ahead. And there was the runway just stretched right out before me like this. The lights are on, and it's just a sliver. The rest was all closed in. I couldn't believe it.
You would have gone right past it. You would have flown right over it if you hadn't seen the break.
It came just before I got there. So I called the airport there, and he said, Roger, I received your message. I am under the map table. The map table was about this high, and it was stainless steel about this thick. Because it was in the control tower, and they used to put big maps on it, so it was huge. It was about 3 times as big as this table. Anyway, he was underneath. He said, I'm afraid the windows are going to blow in the control tower. I'm afraid of getting struck by flying glass. He said, you'll have to land at your own risk. And I said, Roger, I understand you'll have fire trucks on each side and an ambulance to do what's necessary, because I thought we had no choice but to crash, and if it was burning, we'd need all the help we could have. They did. So I had 2 fire trucks out there as I came in and rounded up, and not very much, because in the aircraft, instead of flying like this, was just flying like this because of the ground speed. And the man told me, he said, the wind needle at the anemometer is stuck at over 100 miles an hour. Stuck. He said it has been for over 20 minutes.
That's how fast the wind was blowing?
That means the wind was more than 120 miles an hour, or much probably over 160 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
It's quite fast.
It's fast wind. Sorry, what airport was this again?
In a C-45 Expeditor, Beechcraft Expeditor, twin engine.
What airport? What airport?
Centralia, it's called. It's right down near Exeter in the province of Ontario, near Lake Huron. Right. If I'd gone another 20 miles, I would have been over the lake. Yeah. If I had to crash there, we would have certainly died. Yeah. No mistake. Yeah. But I didn't.
No.
I come in, and when my wheels touch the ground, the fire trucks come up on each side, and they have these, I forget what they call these hooks. They go like this inside. You just snap them on, and the wingtips have a thing they can snap them over, and there's this thing, space in there. It's very reinforced.
Yeah.
And they come up on both sides and snap them on at the same time. I cut the motor in my aircraft, and they gradually slowed down, and till we were going to stop, because they had to stay there. Otherwise, the aircraft would have blown right over on its back.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep it there.
Wow.
On
So
the
you were
ground.
tied down.
A lot of aircraft were blown upside down all around.
Wow.
Even aircraft in the hangar were damaged. But I did get down, and the guys went out, and they looked at me. Shook my hand. And get off. There wasn't a word spoken. Boy, they didn't expect to live, and they did. I didn't expect to live either, but it did.
It's remarkable.
It was a totally impossible situation. There's some people killed in this C-45 just a few weeks before in Toronto doing the same thing. It wasn't nearly as bad. I tell you, sometimes the Lord is there. Anyway, I'm talking too much, saying too little.
I'm just gonna make sure that this is still recording. But yeah, still going. Sweet.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
We're pretty near the end.
Yeah.
The next one is how long you were going to ask me.
How long has it been since you last flew a Spitfire?
It was in July. I can't remember the day. It was between the 1st and the 15th of July. I flew from a place called Ever to Uetersen in Germany. And that's where I got the plane, the big plane that's going to fly me back to
multiple engines. The one with multiple engines.
The United Kingdom, and then I took a boat.
Yeah.
Ship across. Yeah. So that was in July 45. That was the last time I flew a Spitfire.
I think you said the 8th. The 8th of July? Was it the 8th of July?
It might have been.
Yeah.
I cannot recall.
Did you know that was going to be the last time?
Yes, I did when I had to do it. I knew it was the last time I flew a Spitfire. I just had a straight flight. I took off and I went there and landed because I knew there's going to be a big plane there waiting to take me back to England. And they took me to the airport, one airport near Bournemouth, and then we got a bus and took us to Bournemouth. And they had holding unit at the Royal Bath Hotel. That's where I stayed.
Right.
Royal Bath Hotel. And I think these are just a few of I've had others.
Yeah.
Equally, or even perhaps more threatening. But I don't know. I can't think anything more. Either one of those could have paid to us, and that's all there is to it.
Did you ever wish you could have gone and flown again? You wish you could have flown Spitfires?
I did.
Longer?
I ended up teaching. I wanted to go to Korea, so I volunteered again so I could go to Korea and fight. But the war ended there, and I never got a chance.
Right.
Two of my buddies got back to Canada in time, and they went over for a few months. Yeah. And the Doug Lindsay, who was my flight commander, and my squadron leader, missioner, he also went, and they both got some MiGs. I was hoping I'd get a chance to get at them, but I never did. That was the end of my flying there. I did fly after the war. I became a pilot. I wanted to go, and so they made me a flying instructor because they had a lot of NATO students.
Yeah.
And at first, I just didn't want to do that, but I liked it. After I get into it,
you found a passion
I had
for
other stories because the thing is, those stories were shushed up. I probably should have had a medal, really, for doing them. There's no question about it. People have done far less and they got medals for bravery or under difficult. But we weren't allowed to do this.
Right.
I'd done what I was forbidden to do, and but on both occasions, I didn't plan it. I didn't get into something because of stupidity. I get into something because the weather was absolutely wrong and something happened that hadn't been predicted at all.
Yeah.
I had to make the most of what I had. And we often get in that kind of a scrape where we have to just get out of it. We didn't cause it. Some of my miseries I did cause, like the one under the bridge. If I died there, it was my own fault. But these things, no.
Yeah.
I thank God for them. I don't know if there's anything else or not.
There's one more thing. And just the last formal question is just, what can young people do to show our appreciation for those who died and fought in the wars for us to have freedom?
I can think of anything, actually. And I think I've written them down here, and I want to read them. You can do a number of things to show appreciation by attending remembrance ceremonies, like on our Remembrance Day. Getting to know some veterans and thanking them for the service. You can help sometimes ask the people in the Air Force, or the Army, or whatever, the Legion, about poppy sales, and you can stand in a shop and sell poppies. Now all that money goes to help wounded and hurt veterans. Yeah. Veterans who need it for reasons. Young people show appreciation and respect when they say, go to the memorial services to honor those who gave their lives so that others might live in freedom. Go to the services if you can. I'm going to one you may want to go to it, down in Victoria, and it'll be in a cemetery for veterans. And they want me to recite High Flight in front of everybody. It'll probably be, I think it's in October, but I'm not sure. I'll let you know anyway if you can and you want to, and so on. But to attend poppy sales does help the veterans a lot. It's one of the biggest sources of income, because people often some will give you $5 or whatever. It's like whatever they can.
Yeah.
It's like today they wanted some money for the fire. I put in some money because I thought it was my duty to do that, because I was there by the grace of those people. Yeah. And they're doing this. Help them.
They help us.
Help
so
those who help us.
Indeed. It's an important part of life.
And be
Helping others.
grateful.
Help others who help you.
Ian, I took too long to do this. You might have wanted short answers. When you do this over again, you can cut out bits if you want to. I will not be offended.
There's no reason to cut out anything out. It's been you. It's been wisdom that not only I, but potentially thousands of more people will be able to get.
But those 3 stories of things.
No, that's
what's
fine.
that mean?
What? Hello?
Sorry.
We're not done.
Oh yeah, you're not.
I'm still doing a podcast. It's going on to YouTube. If you don't want to be on YouTube.
No, it's just to let you know I'm going out for me. So
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
very not 5 minutes.
Oh,
Sounds good.
what's that?
I'm just going out for a walk, so that's all right.
Will we be able to go?
Yeah, I'll be able to take you home.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to say, on behalf of you, that George has a book. It's called A Joyful Survivor.
Yeah.
Survivor, and it's just lots of little stories about your life and about your experiences. And I mean, if anyone watching is interested, you can get in touch with me, and I can arrange to get you one of George's books.
You can get it at 10 Old Books in Duncan.
Yeah.
A store called 10 Old Books.
10 Old Books in Duncan.
Yeah, you can look it up on the internet. You'll find the phone number. They'll send them to you if you have to.
Yeah, and I can arrange that for you. And if you've enjoyed hearing what George has to say and his some of his awesome and brilliant stories about flying as a pilot, a Spitfire pilot in World War II, then message me and we can arrange that. George, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and going flying with you. Not many people my age. In fact, I'm probably the only person in the world today to go flying with a 100-year-old Spitfire pilot.
Yeah, you
Probably
sure.
are. So
I'm sure you are the
quite a
only person in the world.
It's quite a remarkable thing to be able to say.
And you were able to bring your mother along
Probably
too.
my mother too. It was really special.
I think she liked it.
I think she liked it too. Somebody else.
It's good. That's good. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Great.
See, I love your family, but I'm sorry that you're going back. But that's life, and that's the way it is. You got it.
Well,
You must go where the Lord takes you.
I will. And you have to keep cracking, and we can go flying again next year with Chris Hadfield.
If I'm still here, might happen.
It might happen. I hope you're still.
I
hope
so.
you're. I hope you're still here next year, because we already got an invite back for next year.
They asked us here.
They asked us to come back and fly with them next year, so
Well, keep it in mind.
we'll keep it in mind.
Yeah.
We'll do our very best, and I'll come back out here and
Yeah.
go for a rip. Maybe do some acrobatics. That'd be great.
Because that plane it's got so much more in it than most of those planes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much more valuable plane.
Yeah.
Even though it's old, it's been really well looked after.
Yeah.
And some of those people probably are pretty well off.
Oh, but they're pretty down with that. They're down to earth. I think they were quite down to earth.
Down to earth.
The money didn't matter today.
No.
We thrived on the kindness of others today.
We did.
And I think that was
And
beautiful.
it's good to know that, to experience that, because people who fly are a little different than people who don't.
Mm-hmm.
You won't find nearly as many people who are dishonest or do mean things amongst the flyers. You won't.
Yeah.
They're different,
Yeah.
and some kinds even more differently. The similarity is there's not much similarity between what you need to be a Spitfire pilot and to be an airline pilot.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of airline pilots flew Spitfires, and they killed themselves in the Spitfire because it was everything was too much. They weren't tuned to. You have to. Little movements can cause big actions.
Yeah.
You don't overfly. Over controlling is the worst thing for drivers who are always doing this and never going wrong. You see, steady drivers are the best drivers, and they slowly give people warnings and that. Yeah, they live longer too. So I've lost a lot of friends since I've been here on the road.
Yeah, I believe.
Some of them was their own fault.
Some
of them, just a few. Most of them wasn't.
One of my dad's quotes that I really like is, "Slow driving is smooth driving, and smooth driving is fast driving." I think that's true, and I think perhaps that's applicable to Spitfire flying.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Well, the thing is, if you can't ride a bicycle and keep it upright at a slow speed.
No.
The faster you go, the more it wants to stay upright.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
It's like that. It's like I do little dances. Where I have the greatest trouble is just trying to move slowly.
Yeah. I want to move faster.
There's a reason for it, but once I'm in motion, some of my old instincts are still there, and they enable me to do things on a dance floor that I wouldn't dare do just by myself.
Yeah.
Crazy, but that's the way.
Still got it.
And Joy and I learned more about dancing when I did with her, because I not only was getting to be a reasonably good dancer in my old age, but otherwise, up until I was in middle age, I didn't even bother much. I just kind of jiggled around the floor. And I started getting interested in the music and responding to the rhythm. And then I started to get it. And all of a sudden I found I really liked it. Oh man.
Dancing.
And I like holding girls too.
He likes holding.
And I think most of the girls, they don't mind too much. They like it. They like it because I don't know. It's a nice thing to do.
Well, that's how you found your wife, right? You were dancing with her.
Hmm?
That's how you found your wife. You were dancing with her.
Well, yeah. Did you heard the story? I'm sure. I was on the ship.
On the cruise ship.
And I danced with all the women in the room. And so there's one woman there, and I'd seen her at lunchtime, and I was doing what I do. I usually just jiggle around according to the music all by myself. And she said, "Oh, would I ever love to dance with you?" And I said, "Well, don't hold your breath, but I think maybe we can manage." So so later I saw her up there in the dancing room, and I said, "You said you'd like to dance with me. I know I'd sure like to dance with you." She said, "I can't." She said, "I have crutches." And I said, "You know something? I never even noticed that. I only had eyes for you." I said, "I really didn't notice that at all." And I said, "Why don't you just put them in the corner here and we can get up and dance?" She said, "Well, I can hardly walk without them." And I said, "Why don't you hold on to me?" And she said, "What if I fall?" And I said, "Hang on tighter," so I might get to like it. and she said, she did. And my roommate by then was a little Welshman. I can't remember his name anymore. He's quite charming. When I went into the room I had there before him, so I could have chosen the choicest spot in the room, but I didn't. I saved it for him. I thought, I don't know who will come in, but I'll let him have because he'll be surprised.
Yeah.
And he was. He said, "Well, you gave me the best spot." And I said, "Well, I thought I might have some nice guy like you to come in and be our roommate, so I thought I better treat him right."
That's good.
And, and he was really quite pleased. He's from Wales. Mm-hmm. He's a Welshman, a little Welshman.
That's cool.
And he had some kind of an affliction, but I don't know what it was. And on the journey, he just loved being there.
Yeah.
He
on
said
the cruise, yeah. On the cruise.
Yeah, on the cruise. And anyway, so there was this woman, and I did dance with her. All I could do was to get her up on the floor and sort of just the music would kind of go on and say, just don't even move your feet, just feel it.
Feel it.
Da, 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 da. Just feel it. You don't have to move your feet. And she did. And then she put her crutches there, and she's holding on. And then I said, "You can move your feet a little if you slide them along a little. Don't lift them up. Just take little teensy, itsy bitsy steps with me." Da, 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 like that. And she did. And when she got off the ship, she said that was the best part of the whole journey. It doesn't take much to make some people happy.
Doesn't.
But it sure is worth it if you do. But she got up and she went. I looked around, she was gone.
She left you.
Hmm?
She made you chase her. She made you chase her.
No. She left. She had her daughter was with her. And she was a middle-aged woman anyway. And I don't know her story, but my little Welsh friend came over and he said, "That was an awfully nice thing you did." And I said, "No, au contraire, mon ami." I said, "Do you know any French?" I mean, to the contrary, my dear friend. And he said, "You did that. You helped her to." And I said, "No, but she put trust in me to do that. She trusted me enough to go out with a complete stranger and do that. That is quite a privilege. Most women are afraid of men to some degree with good reason."
Yeah.
And I said, "They haven't been treated very well," but I said, I just had a heart for her and she could read me And she read me right. And I said, no. So she did me an honor by allowing herself to dance with me. And I thought it was so nice. Because when the woman got off the ship, she said, I enjoyed that more than yeah. I always remember that dance. I think if you can sometimes leave an impression like that, you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah, probably.
It was. Then I looked back. I was dancing with. There was a black man over there somewhere, and I asked him. I said, "Sir, may I have the privilege of dancing with your wife?" He said, "Be my guest." I said, "May I ask your wife?" I didn't ask him for the dance. I wanted her, and I said, well, "I'd be delighted if you would dance with me, and if you would dance with me." And she said, "Yes, I'd like to." We got up and we danced, and I brought her back, and I did the curtsies and all the right things, and they both said, "Thank you, that was fun." And I thought, yeah, it's fun if you let it be, but if you hate blacks or something, it's not going to ever be any fun. Life is miserable. Anyway, I looked around and I was looking, and I remembered I was back pretty close to where I was. My back was turned to where that window where the woman had been sitting. And I looked around and I said, I wonder if anybody here would like to dance with me. And I heard a voice say, "You might." "I might." And I looked around and I said, "Would you dance with me?" She said, "I am delighted." So we did. And when she got up, this was funny. She said, they're playing a tango, and it goes, oh, I can't say tango. I love tango music. But anyway, she says a tango, and I said, so? And she said, if you lead, I will follow. And I said, yes. So we did, and it was remarkable. And she said, where did you learn to dance like that? And I said, around the house. I've been dancing with a broom. I always keep the brush side up, it kind of reminds me of a face in a way.
Doesn't do good for cleaning.
Yeah, and it's the truth. That's what I used to do. I used to play tango music. My wife had passed away, and I was a few years on my own. And when I hear the music, I still love music, and I dance with a broom.
Yeah.
And I especially like the tango, and I always wanted to do it. And little by little, I started learning moves that I could do things in the tango.
Yeah.
It looked good. And anyway, but she said so, and she did dance with me. And she said, anyway, she was surprised when I told her to dance to the broom. And that's how I learned. I said, I've never danced a tango with a woman in my life before. And she said, but you did. And I said, if you don't venture, you'll never know.
If you don't venture, you never know.
You never know. And as time went on, I met her, and next morning saw her at breakfast. Said, do you mind if I join you? She said, it'd be my pleasure.